The next ride stopped feeling like chapters. They felt like margins, the kind you don't notice while you're reading, but later realize held the notes that mattered most. I'd wake up some mornings with the sound of the engine already in my head, not loud, not insistent, just present. Like a background hum you only notice when it stops. Other mornings, there was nothing, no pull, no urge. And that felt fine too. I didn't interpret absence as loss anymore. That was new. There was a time when if something stopped calling to me, I assumed it meant I'd missed my chance, that I hadn't acted fast enough. That desire was a limited resource, and hesitation would drain it away. The bike taught me otherwise. Some things return when you let them. One evening, I rode with no destination long enough that the city started to feel like a memory instead of a place. Street names stopped registering, landmarks blurred into function. Left, right, straight, slow, stop. The world simplified itself into decisions that mattered only for the next few seconds. That kind of simplicity isn't empty. It's precise. I realized how rare it is to exist inside a time frame that's small. Most of life is lived 5 steps ahead, rehearsing outcomes, managing impressions, bracing for reactions that haven't happened yet. Riding collapsed all of that into now. Lanes painted over old ones. Signs contradicting each other, as if the road itself wasn't sure what it wanted to be yet. I slowed and navigated through carefully, body loose, eyes scanning constantly. And it hit me how familiar that felt, living inside something unfinished, not knowing which markers were permanent and which were temporary, trusting your ability to adjust instead of waiting for clarity. I laughed quietly inside the helmet. That was it. That was the whole thing. The kid who stole the bike didn't trust the future to make space for him. He didn't believe patience would be rewarded. So he took movement wherever he could find it. I wasn't ashamed of him anymore. I understood him. But I also understood why I didn't need to be him again. Now, movement was available without theft. Freedom didn't require damage. I rode past a small diner still open late, lights warm, windows fogged. A few people inside, heads bent over plates, conversations low and contained. I imagined the weight of their days setting down temporarily between bites. I didn't stop, not because I didn't want to, because I didn't need to turn the ride into something else to validate it. That realization felt important. I kept going until the road thinned again, then turned back without debate. No internal negotiation, no justification. The body decided, the mind followed. On the way home, I noticed how smoothly I transitioned back into stillness. No resistance, no disappointment. The end of the ride didn't feel like loss. It felt like punctuation. A period, not an ellipsis. In the garage, I stayed standing for a while after shutting everything down. The quiet wrapped around me slowly, respectfully. I didn't reach for my phone, didn't replay the ride in my head. I let it rest where it belonged. Later that night, lying in bed, I realized something subtle but undeniable. I trusted myself more, not in a loud, confident way, in a quiet, structural way. Like knowing a bridge will hold without needing to test it every time you cross. The bike didn't give me courage. It removed unnecessary fear, fear of pauses, fear of unfinished thoughts, fear of choosing wrong and not being able to recover. Riding taught me that recovery is constant, that balance isn't static, that small corrections made early prevent dramatic consequences later. Those lessons didn't stay on the road. They showed up everywhere. In conversations I let breathe instead of filling. In decisions I delayed without panic. In moments I allowed to end without squeezing them for meaning. The mini bike stayed small. That mattered. It never became a symbol of escalation. It didn't demand upgrades or expansion. It didn't tempt me into turning practice into performance. It stayed exactly what it was. A reminder. That movement doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. That stillness doesn't mean stagnation. That freedom isn't about how far you go, but how gently you can return. And every time I roll it out again, every time the engine settles beneath me, every time the road opens just wide enough, I don't feel like I'm starting something. I feel like I'm continuing something that never really stopped. Just waiting. Balanced. Ready. Say continue when you opened on a day that felt almost insultingly normal. Grocery list on the counter. Phone at 10%. A half-finished cup of coffee going cold next to the sink. I rolled the bike out because it was there. That was it. The street looked the same as always. Same cracks in the pavement, same mailbox leaning slightly to the left, same neighbor backing out too fast without really checking. Nothing about the world announced that something important was about to happen. I started the engine and waited. Let it warm up. Let myself settle into the sound again. That low, steady vibration had started to feel like a language I remembered without ever studying. I didn't tell anyone where I was going because I didn't know. I didn't even think of it as going anywhere. I just turned onto the main road and kept moving. The city peeled away slowly, not dramatically. It didn't vanish all at once. It thinned. Houses spaced out, stores turned into warehouses, then into empty lots with weeds pushing through broken concrete. The air changed, less exhaust, more dust, more heat. I rode at a pace that felt almost boring, not slow, just intentional. Fast enough to feel the wind press against my chest. Slow enough to notice how the road surface changed from smooth to rough without warning. I realized something then. When you're on something small, you can't lie to yourself about speed. In a car, speed is abstract, a number on a dashboard, something managed by tires and suspension and insulation. On a mini bike, speed is immediate. It's sound and vibration and wind trying to peel your hands loose if you're not paying attention. It keeps you honest. I liked that. The road bent slightly to the right, then straightened out into a long stretch that felt endless. Fields on both sides, dry grass moving in uneven waves. A fence that ran parallel to me for what felt like miles, posts passing in a steady rhythm that pulled my focus inward. That rhythm did something to my thoughts. They slowed down, not because I was trying to quiet them. They just didn't have room to pile up the way they usually did. Every thought had to pass through the same narrow channel of attention. Stay balanced, stay aware, stay moving. Everything else waited its turn. I thought about the kid I used to be, but not the way I usually did. Not as a memory wrapped in regret or nostalgia. More like an old version of software still running quietly in the background, still influencing things without being obvious. I understood him better now. He wasn't reckless. He was precise in a way adults often mistake for carelessness. He watched the road. He felt the engine. He trusted his body because it was the only thing he had control over. What scared people wasn't the risk. It was the refusal to ask permission. I passed a gas station that looked like it had been there since before anyone thought to remodel it. One pump out of order. Faded signs, advertising prices that didn't make sense anymore. I pulled in without thinking much about it. When I cut the engine, the sudden quiet felt loud. A man stood near the entrance, leaning against the wall, smoking. He glanced over, eyes tracking the bike, then me. Not curious, not impressed, just aware. I took my helmet off and set it on the seat, stretched my neck, felt sweat cooling against my skin. "You ride that far?" he asked. His voice wasn't challenging, just conversational. "Far enough," I said. He nodded like that was a complete answer. I filled the tank slowly, listening to the faint slosh of fuel. The smell brought something sharp and old to the surface. Not a specific memory, just a feeling that lived somewhere between excitement and caution. When I finished, I didn't rush to leave. I leaned against the bike for a moment, watching heat shimmer above the road. The man finished his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. "You're light," he said. "That helps." I smiled slightly. Not because it was funny, because it was true in more ways than one. Back on the road, the sky had shifted, clouds gathering in uneven layers, the light flattening out. I checked my phone at a stop, saw the forecast, put it back without really deciding anything. Rain was part of it. The first drops hit without warning. Large, heavy, spacing themselves out just enough to make each one noticeable. Dark spots bloomed on the pavement ahead of me. I adjusted my posture, slowed a little. Not afraid, just respectful. Rain on a bike teaches you humility quickly. You don't fight it, you work with it. Smooth inputs. No sudden decisions. Let the tires tell you what they're comfortable with. The world smelled different almost immediately. Earth, oil, something green and alive rising up from the ground. I rode through it, water beating on my jacket, streaking across my visor. The sound of the engine softened under the rain, like it was being wrapped in cloth. I felt more present than I had in years. Not happy, not sad, just exactly where I was. When the rain eased, I found a turnout overlooking a shallow valley. I pulled over and shut the engine off, letting the quiet return slowly instead of all at once. The land stretched out in front of me, muted colors under a heavy sky. No fences here, no buildings, just open space and distance. I sat on the bike and watched the last drops fall from the visor onto the ground, each one making a tiny mark that disappeared almost instantly. I thought about how much of my